G'day guys, welcome to another episode of Pitman Racing. In this episode we're working on the TZ250. I recently just got suspension back and also an ignitech ignition. Hope you enjoy the episode guys. Yeah guys, so I've been working on the TZ. It's been in pieces for a little while now and I'm hanging to get it back together. We're aiming to get to the Nationals in November. And obviously after the Festival of Speed I was working on suspension, so I sent that away, and then I did a little bit of gearbox stuff. I got some internal gears from a good mate of mine, and we've got the ignitech ignition to work on. So the bike's been sitting like this for a little while and I'm hanging to get it together, and finally we got the suspension back and it's wrapped up in its box still, and we're gonna unwrap it together. And by the way, oh yeah, just some other caps we had got. This was a tool that he had made for the inserts. Oh man, stoked. Nice machining. Oh, happy with that. So we'll get that back on the bike, get the front end in and the wheels back on. Stoked. Nice. Alright, let's unpack the other one. Yes! Sweet. Oh, happy with that, man. Alright, stoked. Well, we'll put them back in the bike, guys. I'll just clean up the workbench a little bit and we can fit them back into triple clamps. Alright, so we're going to put the front end back in. Obviously you can see heaps of wiring going on here. This is a new ignitech unit. This is my old CDI and power valve unit and stuff. So we've got quite a bit of work going on here, but I want to get the front end back in. So we'll shuffle that aside and let's get this underway.
How do you do that?
It's just a bracket. The bracket comes off and we can mount that one after.
Any wiring goes behind the bars?
Yeah, there is. We've got choke cables and the clutch cable there. That should just all fit in behind that. Let's put the bar end on. Okay, and I'll keep coming up. Okay, we'll go about there for now. And I'll just nip these up just so they hold into place. They're quite loose. That'll hold there. Alright, so we've got the two legs back in. Now I had previously had when I was racing the bike, I had certain settings in the triple clamp and stuff, and the bike was feeling okay. But look, now that I've got new setup in the forks, what I'm going to do is just go back to standard Yamaha geometry settings. So in their owner's manual, they actually give you, all of the bar heights to how far the forks go through the triple clamps. So what I'm going to do is just go back to standard fork tube through the triple clamps. So they're saying 21 mil through the forks. So I'm going to start there, then do a test day, fill the bike, and then change from there. So either it's too aggressive on the front, or we'll see how it feels. So it's a good start line, and I reckon we should be able to progress from there. So we'll start from standard settings. Now the forks are through. Smidgen more. Just a touch more. Okay. Alright, happy with that. Alright, we'll lock them off. Okay, the forks won't go anywhere now. I'll do the bottom. Okay, so we're just prepping the barrels to put them back on. Just cleaning off the old silicone. Dad checked the crank and the pistons. Make sure that all look fine. And then we've also got to put the gearbox back in. So that's the job for today. These are the barrels. So we'll clean them up, and then get them ready to put back on. So we've just inspected the barrels, and you can see the nicker seal. It's just starting to lift on the corners, on either side of the corners. The rest of the nicker seal in the barrel looks pretty good, but they have done a fair bit of work, these barrels, so we'll probably run them just for the practice days, and then I'll send them off to the platers and get them re-nicker sealed. So I send them over to New Zealand platers. I found they've been really good with the 350 barrels, and really good high quality, and everything we normally ask they do. A couple of other barrels we've done, around this edge it gets detonation, and when the O-ring goes in there, the detonation can come up and start destroying the O-ring. So what we normally get done is get this edge welded up, and then they face it back, not facing the deck height, but machining just that edge off and keeping the same deck height of the barrel, and then the O-ring can sit nicely back in there. So highly recommend the New Zealand platers. They're very good at what they do there. So what are you doing there?
I'm just putting a bit of oil on the bores so that when we put it together, we've got plenty of oil on the piston and the rings and the bore to start with. We've got a bit on the big ends and the little ends. So first start up's a little bit more smoke comes out of it because we've put a bit of oil in, but it lubes everything. Make sure we don't get any problems with piston nipping up or anything like that.
Alright, we'll make sure the gaskets fit correctly on which cylinder they go on, and then we'll put it together. So Dad's just putting a bit of oil on the pistons and make sure the ring is in the correct spot once the barrel goes on. So what sort of sealant do we use?
So we use a 3-bond sealant, which is something that's supplied from Yamaha, originally as a genuine part, but now there's lots of manufacturers for them. But it's a 3-bond it's called, and that's perfect for gasket faces. It stays slightly rubbery, and this allows it to seal around the gasket.
Do you got to be quick with it?
It's a bit of working time, but you don't want to be sitting here thinking about having a beer or talking to your mates about rubbish.
Went on nicely.
Yeah, that went in pretty well. We've got to line up the power valve power valve little knuckle.
As you put this barrel on?
Yeah. So as we slide this barrel down,
Yeah.
we've actually got to start to line up the power valve knuckle.
It's a bit fiddly.
Yeah.
So the barrel's on.
And that power valve knuckle goes in place there. Right, then we'll set the power valves up to make sure they're opening together in a while. So we're fitting the O-rings for the head.
Do you use a grease or a...
Yeah, we've got a special grease that we put on the inner red one, so it holds it in place. And that's a Moroso grease. It's high temperature grease. Clear, it holds the head on nicely. Seals nicely on the head, and also holds the gasket in place.
When you put the head on?
Yeah, there's some dowels that we've got in here, which centralise the head, so it's make sure it's in the right position. Checking the O-rings again to make sure they're right.
With these head bolts, they're obviously as old as the bike.
Yeah, they're aluminium head bolts that are nice and light, but also that means they're going to stretch and wear a little bit. So we're a little bit careful with those as to the tension we do them.
Yeah.
And then they're replaced at various times.
Yeah, I've actually got a new set of those coming in. So for the practice days, I'll just use these ones. But once the new bolts come in, I'll make sure they're ready for the nationals.
They'll go on the replated barrels.
Yeah, I'll get those barrels replated. I'll get fresh head bolts, and then we're not worried about any water leaks then, and it all gets tensioned up correctly.
I'll just check those O-rings again, because I think that had dislodged as I put the head on.
Yeah, it's critical, isn't it? Making sure
Absolutely. And we're right this time. And I hold the head down so it doesn't move before we get the bolts
Once the bolts are in, they
in and tight. It holds, it's not going anywhere, but hold the head down until
until they got tension.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we torque wrench the head bolts up, and in the manual, in the owner's manual, they recommend to go to 14 foot-pounds on the head bolts, and on the little bolts is 8 foot-pounds. So we stick to that, and then when we start it, we just have a look to make sure there is no leaks in the head. If we haven't tensioned them enough. That's about right, Dad?
Yeah. And we do cross corners on each head. Do them up in a couple of stages. Go across and check them all.
Yeah.
Again, just to make sure.
Nice. You can actually see the 3-bond just squeezing out of the barrels to the cases nicely.
Beautiful.
Okay, so what plugs do we run in a TZ, Dad?
So in the 250, these are an NGK plug. They're a very short plug because there's not a lot of room between the radiator and the top of the barrel and head. So they run a shorter plug, and it's a 105 heat range. They're quite an expensive plug, but they're the right plug for the 250. The plug leads that are attached to them are also a special lead that we buy in and cap. It's an NGK cap, and
They're a rubber cap.
they're a rubber cap. They seal on really nicely on the top, and we get a really good connection. But again, very expensive, but the right thing.
Yeah. So you would just put the gearbox back in.
Yeah.
These have a cassette gearbox where you're able to pull the whole transmission out and change the internal gears for each track if you want. So it went all back together fine, Dad?
Yeah, it went really nice. It's the counter shaft goes out through a bearing, and the clutch shaft lines up through the it's got a shaft and a position for that.
Yeah.
And then the gear shaft just slides in position, and the selector picks up on each of these little pins, moving it, the gearbox going down in the gears or up through the gears. And that's adjusted on here. There's an adjustment here, which is, we don't really alter that once it's set. It just positions this in the centre of those pickup pins, so that stays pretty well. You can just slide that out. The gearbox has got 5 screws around it there that just it all comes out in one cluster, and so it makes it very easy.
Yeah, it's something I haven't really looked into yet. Changing internal gears. I normally work on the final gearing, like on your chain and sprocket, but then when you really dial in the bike for each track, you can change the internal gears to suit each corner. So once I get better at it, that's the next step I'm keen to learn and practice. So you just line that up with dowels?
The 2 dowels for the clutch. And that's seated. And a couple of these screws that go in behind the clutch have got a taper on those, where the others are just normal Phillips head.
Okay.
Sorry, not Phillips head, Allen key. So we'll put the clutch in, and this has to line up with the drive of the clutch, which is on the back here. The drive, it's got a bearing in the centre which goes over on this sleeve. The drive for the clutch has to line up with the gear that's inside there. So it's a matter of just putting that in, wriggle it around slightly, and the clutch basket goes on like that.
So these are a dry clutch as well. So is that called the clutch boss there?
This one is,
yeah,
in the centre. And as you can see, the clutch plates fit into that, and then also in the outside in between.
Yeah.
And then this one's got a lock tab which has got 3 which fit into there. And a very fine thread on this side. It tightens up nicely.
Okay, so we'll tighten up the clutch basket now. We've got a special clutch tool, and Dad does that up to tension. So putting the fibre plates and steel plates in, you started off with the fibre, Dad?
Yeah, fibre's the first one, and then followed by a metal, and then a fibre, and you just go through and put all of them in.
Is there 5 fibres or 6? I think there's...
I think there's 6 plates in fibre plates in these.
Yeah.
Later ones. The earlier one on the TZ250 was 5,
Yeah.
and we
went to a 6 on it.
we went to and put an extra plate in, and they make room for it by running thinner steel plates, and it's good and bad. The problem with the thinner ones is they warp and don't last as long.
Fatigue quicker.
Yeah, but we get the extra fibre plate in there, which is really important. So this goes in, and the teeth here mesh with, line up with those. So
And there was a ball bearing in there?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's in the centre of on the push rod.
Oh, yeah.
That's just move that around till it lined up.
Nice.
The outside, and then it goes in position. Then the clutch springs, and that secures the clutch. Just start those by hand to make sure they're not cross-threaded. There's a little bit of spring tension
Yeah.
on them.
So same, just either side, do it evenly?
Yeah, and just so it pulls it in evenly. It's perhaps being a bit pedantic, but it's probably make sure it keeps it flat and level.
Yeah. So you reset the carbies, Dad?
Yeah. I'm
So-
just adjusting the slides, just making sure they're all positioned in correctly.
Now they need to come up evenly, don't
Yes. Yeah. So if you see it, they're probably coming up unevenly at the moment. So just
they? How often do you check this?
we check them really regularly, because if the slides lift together, it really helps the performance. If the carbies are running together,
Yeah.
pulling together, it means the engine's working at its absolute optimum. If you get one carby pulling ahead of the other, it's nowhere near as sharp out of the turns,
Yeah.
and then we start to get variation in the plug colour, because one cylinder's doing it. So if you have a look, they should be pretty close now.
Yeah, it's nice.
So we'll check those after we've run the bike.
Like the first run?
First run, we'll check and make sure it's they haven't settled, or I've held onto the slide and put a bit of weight on the throttle to make sure all cables are all seated properly.
Yeah.
We've rerouted where the cables go to make sure they're in the right position. On the TZ, it's not all that neat, but they've got to run in, and the radiator fits in over these, and they've got to run over the radiator. So we have to have the cables just coming down nicely, so they're not caught up anywhere. And
Good. Yeah, you got the power valve cables there, you got the choke cables.
and then the two throttle cables. So you've got 6 cables that have got to come through, all nice and neat.
Yeah.
And they can't really be too tight or bound up. We just put a cable tie around these loosely,
Yeah.
just to hold them in position, and then the radiator holds them back in.
Okay, so we just fitted up the radiator. As I said, that covers all of the cables that run up behind it. Just fit up the water tubes down to the water pump. Dad's now fitting the cables to the power valve. They can get a little bit tricky, but once you got the nipples in the drive, in the drum, then you tighten them up to tension, Dad?
Yeah. And then we set them up so that they both pull and open fully.
And you got to check that. You got to make sure they're open fully, because that's going to affect the power.
Yeah, if they're not open all the way, it just restricts your top end power considerably. So it's something that we check pretty regularly to make sure they're working properly. Once they're adjusted,
do they often come out, or like do they?
No, they tend to be pretty right until we like pull it apart each time. You obviously pull the barrels off, which is reasonably regular. We reset it up again.
And so you would check the carbies, make sure the slides go up, and make sure the power valve goes.
The power valve's opening all the way.
Yeah.
So that cable will drop in there now. And the adjustment's up on the servo motor, up in front of the handlebars. Which is around. So now the final adjustment will be done when we've hooked up the power, and we've got the power. When you first turn the power on, it opens and closes the power valve. It goes through a cycle, and the reason for the cycle is to get rid of any carbon or anything built up on the actual power valve slides, as they're called. So it just opens them fully and closes them. So each time you flick the ignition or the power on, it cycles through that, so we know that the power valve works and that they're going to operate at the correct time.
All right, slowly ticking off the jobs.
Yeah, we're getting there. Be running soon.
Okay, just fitting up the front sprocket again, because we had the gearbox out. So we've got the battery hooked up, and we're just checking the power valves. I'll just get in there. So you can look down the barrel of the exhaust port. Can't really see it just yet. Bad lighting, sorry, but you can obviously hear the power valves working, and Dad's just making sure they're balanced, and then we're happy with how they're working. It's a little bit of a fiddly system, but once you get them right, they work well. Hey, Dad?
Yeah, they work really, really nicely. The later model made it a little bit easier. They put a a drum pulley on either side, which meant there's 4 cables coming down, and then you adjust them, and they're a little bit more accurate than these. These are sort of a bit of a...
There's a lot of parts to this one, isn't there?
Yeah, lots of little parts that sort of...
that could fail.
Well, no, it's pretty robust, but they're just... It's just not easy to adjust it, and then it doesn't make it quite as accurate. These things really perform properly when everything's exactly right, like when our carbies are lifting together, when the power valve works perfectly.
Yeah, it needs to all work in sync.
Yeah, so we've got these feeling really nice now. It's a bit hard to show you, but they're pulling right up, which is where you want maximum power, so that there's nothing poking down into the exhaust port. It's got full flow, and now they're working nicely. I'll just make sure that's tight, and our cables are adjusted correctly, so that's all set.
All right, perfect. So once we're all done here, I end up wire locking everything. So I actually wire lock those cables, wire lock the throttle cables, the power valve, all things just to make sure they don't come off. So nearly there, it's looking like a bike again. Okay, so just putting gearbox oil in the bike now. So the whole bike's together, the clutch went together nicely. Got the exhaust on, tank, and everything's ready to go, ready to start now. I just needed to get some gearbox oil, so I use the modal trans oil. I get that through Yamaha Pitmans. So on the bike, it says 500 mil of gearbox oil, so I've put that in. Now I'll lock wire that up. I locked wire all of the other little drain bolts up, and on the sump there, so that's all lock wired and ready to go on the track. Alright guys, so we're gonna give the 250 a start up. So we've got it all together, put the gearbox oil in, put water in the radiator, so that's all ready to go up to temp. So fuel lines are connected. Can we just show the power valves working here? So I'll just show, I'll switch it on and off again. Just down here, we'll watch the motor on that side. It's Ali. So I'll switch it on now. Okay, so I can clearly see that goes through the whole revolution of the motor going, servo motor working correctly. So, alright, I'll get it into gear. Alright, use a bit of choke to first start up. Well, in the last video, I had the TZ250 out of Malala for a test run. And in that video, I was explaining about the black boxes. Now, I had Jean-Paul Mestre email me after and actually send me another black box for the coil. So, look, I really appreciate that, Jean-Paul. Now, I use Mestre's crank, Mestre's heads, his ignition boxes, and Mestre has a lot of good parts for the TZ350, and I would highly recommend his stuff. Other people that have helped me out with my TZs are Vince Kundle from Fonseca. I've got to give a good shout out to him. He's helped me build the 350 and also my U model TZ250. He's helped me with a lot of parts with that. Another guy in the UK is Jamie O'Brien from Windy Shed Classics. He sent us his pipes for this, and very good performance pipes. I'm really happy with them, and I actually got more horsepower just putting them straight on with the 350. So big shout out to those guys in the UK. Alright guys, so I just warmed up the TZ250. I'll be mainly concentrating on that at the track day tomorrow, but I'm going to take the 350 out again, and I just want to make sure that the clutch isn't slipping this time, so I'll put a new clutch in it. Another comments, I had a couple of guys mention in the last video that they saw the clutch boss, where the clutch plates sit into, it's quite worn. And as you can see in this photo that I put up, you can see where the clutch plates have been biting into, and I reckon a lot of my clutch slipping was because it wasn't getting freed up. The plates weren't releasing from the clutch hub there. So what I'm going to do is get a new one of them and eliminate that, and with a new clutch it should be sweet. So I'm going to fire this up now guys anyway, so I'll put the fuel on. Really happy with that guys. That fired straight up, so be ready for a good another test, and we'll see how it runs. Hopefully we can do a little bit more setup on suspension as well. So stay tuned for the ride day I'll post up. What do you reckon, Winnie? You happy with that? Hey? Good girl. It was a little bit different this one. No riding, just I wanted to show you guys a bit of the stuff I do in the sheds with Dad and the workshop. So in my last episode, I asked you guys to leave some comments on the video, and I had Alan Rodriguez comment about some TZ tips, and he recommended to have warm-up spark plugs. And so we actually do that, Alan. I didn't do it in that last video, but we normally run like an 8 heat range spark plug for warm up and then run 9s or 10 heat range when we race. So really appreciate the comment, mate. And guys, I want to lead the video also with another TZ tip. Now, if you're running TZ250s and also other TZs, another tip I will highly recommend to do is when you come in, turning off your fuel tap and taking off your fuel lines to the carbies, because I've had it where the fuel taps can leak, and especially with the 350, they can leak, fill up the carbies, stay flood, and then the carbies just go filling up the crankcases with fuel, and that can cause a very expensive damage. That can bend con rods, it can do a hydraulic lock on start, and it's a pain in the backside when that can happen. So I'd highly recommend, just as a thing to do, every time I come in, you'll see us, we turn off the fuel tap, take off the fuel lines, and then when you go back out, just put them back on and you're good to go. So yeah, look, hope you enjoyed the episode again, and like, subscribe, leave comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and hope you enjoy the episode. Trailer all loaded up, ready for the ride day. Hope some of this information helps, guys. I'm still learning about the TZs too. Happy to help other TZ brothers out.